Okay, so I wanted to get back a little bit to the scientific inquiry a little bit more from general terms, right? We were talking about kind of the DNA, kind of the how that's gone a little bit awry in the research of Sasquatch before. And I was wondering, there's a few terms that get thrown out a lot these days. The one that I don't know, I feel like 2 years ago gets super popular is like the basics of all logic is Occam's razor.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's an ancient term, right? But it was like it's
Hmm.
Occam's razor. Well, they're just
Sure.
seeing bears because that's the simplest explanation.
Yeah.
I wonder, and I think it's probably not the case, right? Like you can see it not being the case very clearly in medicine, right? Because if your stomach hurts, yeah, maybe you ate something wrong. It
Right.
could be a lot of other things
A
that,
lot
that
of other things.
progressively
Right.
get worse. So,
Yeah. No, that's a
um,
it's a pet topic of mine because of its misapplication. So I'll be happy to chat about that. You bet.
yeah, yeah. Also, yeah, if you want to take us from there, that'd be
Oh,
awesome
sure.
to chat about. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting when I mean, Occam's razor is kind of the colloquialism for the notion of parsimony. And you have to realize these terms come from scientists who are steeped in the philosophy of science. And in the strict sense, scientific knowledge progresses by a process called falsification. That is an acknowledgement that it's impossible to test every example, every possible case. And so you can never be completely sure about your conclusion. But it is practical to look for um, uh, what might be more readily presentable exceptions to your conclusion. And so that exception can falsify your premise, your conclusion, or whatever stage in the process you might be. And so, we basically knock the feet out from under the hypothesis and then go back to the drawing board and revise.
Mhm.
Well, Occam argued that if we're to follow this process in a orderly, systematic fashion, it would make sense then to start with the simplest explanation. That would be the most straightforward to attempt to falsify. And then having done that, you're justified in adding additional factors to your explanation or your relationship. And so, the original says something to the effect, paraphrasing it, one should not unnecessarily add elements to your hypothesis, add variables. And so, but when you go back to the, kind of philosophy of science introductory texts or general science texts, where that deal with the scientific method or with mention Occam's razor, invariably they paraphrase it. They rattled off something like the simplest explanation is most likely the correct one. Absolutely unjustified. That's not
Sure.
what
Yeah.
Occam said. He
Okay.
made no judgment as to the likelihood of correctness. He was
Uh-huh.
simply presenting a heuristic, a tool, a guideline for systematically testing hypotheses, yeah, so that we're all kind of saying, hey, don't all run out to different areas of the outfield looking for the answer. We start here together and we progress out to more complicated. And so the notion that it is more likely to be true couldn't be further from the truth, especially when it comes to biological systems, which are notoriously complex and, quote, messy in terms of our ability to quantify, to apprehend all of the many interacting factors. And so if history of science has taught us anything, it is never more likely that the simplest explanation is true. It's often very, very complex, and especially when you're dealing with things like evolutionary history, because then you
Mhm.
have
Sure.
that element of time, that arrow of time, and of course, evolution or natural selection, the forces acting are determined by the present circumstances, with
Hmm.
no foreknowledge of what future circumstances are going to be. And so the path, if you're looking across a broad expanse of time, the path from A to B is almost certainly not a straight line, but it's zigzaggy path through time
Sure.
as
Yeah.
changes or as conditions have changed in various and often stochastic ways. So yeah, that's when
Sure.
it comes to, like, the example you gave. Now, I do admonish enthusiasts, and especially the amateur enthusiasts who have never grappled with that kind of rationale,
Mm.
that you have to bear in mind what are the more, well, then it's a matter of probability, rather truthfulness or lack of truthfulness. It's, what's the probability? So when you acknowledge through your study that there probably are many, many more black bear than there are Sasquatch out there, and you encounter a relatively flat-footed, five-toed imprint, vague perhaps, leaves a little ambiguity, then you must first address the point. What are the odds? What's the probability that it's a Sasquatch, a very rare organism, versus
Mm.
the spore left by something that's, maybe 200 times more common out there?
Sure. And
And
if you were gonna like really apply Occam's razor the way you described it, you would start with black bear, rule out
right,
black bear, and then
right,
move on.
exactly. And and often, and the other one that's commonly mistaken are human barefoot tracks. Sometimes they have in their mind that it's completely unlikely that a human would be walking barefoot out here in this circumstance. That's not often the case anymore, especially with,
Sure.
there's a lot of popularity in barefoot running clubs, even, where they
Uh-huh.
barefoot runners, and oftentimes in or campers who traipse out to answer the call of nature and and don't put the
Sure.
shoes on. They're
Right.
good, hardy outdoors people. But the point is, you hit the nail on the head. You need to establish then a set of criterion by which you can reject the simpler explanation that it's a human,
Mm-hmm.
before then attribute it to something much less likely, much less common, but
Sure.
not necessarily impossible. So
Yeah. Is
yeah,
that where the adage, like, there's that notion that you hear this? This one kills my dad. Actually, my dad was a aerospace engineer, but he got his
oh,
degree in physics and things. And so when they went to Mars and were testing for life, one of the tests came back and showed life, but the other ones didn't. And I've
okay,
heard the scientist that came up with the one that tested for ancient, like, life, but
yeah,
and he was like, no, mine was actually the gold standards. Theirs wasn't. So I guess there's still some debate, but there's that saying, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Does
right.
it get back to that a little? Is that
It does.
it's
Well, it
not?
does.
Yeah.
And Carl Sagan really championed that. And in his what was that book, The Demon Haunted World, he really popularized, I think, that. And I, you know, at its fundamental level, I don't like that adage, because we should hold all questions up to the same standard, I think, of
Uh-huh.
evidence, and things that we might consider as extraordinary now,
Right.
20 years from now, they're conventional wisdom. And
Sure.
so I don't, I mean, if it causes someone to work a little harder, but if it causes it, then that's great, to establish their case and make a compelling argument. If, though, it suppresses interest and curiosity in the subject because it's deemed extraordinary and wanting for extraordinary evidence, or conclusive evidence. I mean, it's like with
Uh-huh.
Sasquatch people.
Right.
It's like, where's the body? Michael Shermer's unfortunate adage: "Show me the body. The science starts once you have a body." Again, a very unscientific position. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but one of my colleagues here on campus, well, a fellow faculty member, let's put it that way, but calling him a colleague would be perhaps too gracious on my part. But he uh,
Sure.
he was one of my most vocal detractors, and
Mhm.
I was, in his mind, an easy target to propound his interpretation of skepticism, which he wore like an armband. I get really bothered by people who sit and pound on skepticism like it's one key on the keyboard. That becomes really annoying after a while.
Sure. As the kids call it, spamming it. Right?
When you don't get it with the melody. But anyway, he wrote a regular column in our local little newspaper.
Uh-huh.
And had an opinion about everything, of course. It was just that was the type of personality he was. And so, of course, when it came to Sasquatch, he figured he knew best. And I, again, like I said, he saw me as an easy target, and I became something of a straw man for everything that was loony and crazy and out there, unintellectual and so forth. But he jumped on this in the wake of one of Michael Shermer's columns in Scientific American. He jumped on that bandwagon, and so he took me to task in a letter to the editor. And he was an instructor in the physics department, and his department chair actually jumped on board too. But they were saying, show me the body. That Meldrum has no physical evidence to support his hypothesis or his idea. And they would be above saying belief that Sasquatch exists. Well, I wrote back and I said, well, isn't it interesting? I said, first of all, I take tremendous exception to this, to promoting this notion that the science starts once you have a body, and to hear it coming from a physicist is especially.
Sure.
I said, show me an atom, show me a quark, show me a black hole, show me a string. Most of the phenomenon that are comprised within physics and theoretical physics.
Right. Show me dark matter and dark energy.
Yeah. You lack the corpus delicti. So how do you conduct science? Well, you look at the influence on their surroundings, the interaction with other elements, the trace that they leave historically and in the present. I said, those are the very types of evidence: footprints, shed hair, vocalizations, and fleeting sightings. Those are the very same types of evidences that we're using to at least advocate the justification for pursuing such a question. And so
sure.
That got a lot of very positive, supportive response across in fact, one time, because it got picked up in an AP article and went all over. I mean, literally went around the world.
Oh, wow.
My work was mentioned around the world. There was even a Gallup poll that was conducted whether Dr. because it was rumored that a letter had been circulated. I actually to this day don't know for sure if it was factual or not, but the rumor was a letter had been circulated with advocating that my tenure be revoked because of my lack of intellectual honesty, or whatever you want to call it, the fact that I was embarrassing the university. But anyway, the point was, I got a letter. I mean, I got tons. Oh, by the way, the Gallup poll was decidedly in my favor.
Very good.
People were very supportive of the notion of academic freedom, and that this was a legitimate question, and if you went about it scientifically, there was no criticism justified. Anyway, so that was gratifying. But I also got tons of letters. I mean, my email inbox was hundreds and hundreds of emails in a day. One of them, though, really stuck out. It was a physics professor and I don't remember the institution back east. But he said, Dr. Meldrum, I want you to know I walked into my introductory physics course this morning with the newspaper rolled up under my arm. And the first order of business was to read this article with the class about, the controversy over your research and the comments that were made. And he said, I'll have there was a very animated conversation and a total lack of unanimity amongst the students about whether Sasquatch existed or not, and arguments made on both sides. Says, but on this point, they were absolutely of one voice, and that was that you were not an embarrassment to your institution, but that this guy, Martin Hackworth, was an embarrassment to his institution, and in fact, an embarrassment to our discipline of physics.
Extra shots. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. It was a lovely time, as always. and we appreciate your time. So thanks so much for being here. I'm going to leave you with a couple announcements. One is that I am really excited to announce, if you've heard on the show, I've been talking about my epic absurdist satire, Pirates of Appalachia, for some time. It truly is epic. It's going to be 2 books, and I'm going to be releasing those in all book forms, but also as a serial on Substack. So if you head over to Substack, I'll have the link perhaps on the screen, perhaps just in the description in the pinned comment. But if you head over there, you'll be able to follow along chapter by chapter. I will be releasing the whole book. If you want to sign up to support me, support the show, I am going to have some extra content on there. I actually always have all these notes in my work that go to my editor, so that if he thinks to change something, it says this is how it plays out later. This is where I did the research, whatever stupid little joke I make to myself. Mainly, I'll have on there. I'm going to have a lot of fun little bonus content on there as well. And I'm going to do a bunch of readings. So that will be on there for the paid customers. But if you want it free, you will get the whole thing free as well. Both books will be on there, and I'll have ordering links. Right now, they'll probably be pre-order. Depending on when you watch this, maybe it'll be the regular order, but you'll be able to get the entire book too if you want to skip ahead and read the whole thing and read it on your e-reader, or read a paperback or a hardcover version. Whatever you would like. I'm trying to meet you where you are. I mean, you can meet me where I am, and that's the bar, usually, and predominantly Monday through Thursday. On the weekends, I drink at home. So, but if you would check that out, certainly I would really appreciate it. Also, we do have a member section on the YouTube if you'd like to go on there and get all the shows way early. And I'm going to start doing some monthly live streams for the members as well. Anyways, thanks so much for all your support, everybody. Cheers.